Happy Tuesday. How are you doing? Well, today I thought I want to talk about rejection. So, how many people have been rejected here? And I guess it's not about have you been rejected. It's more about when was the first time that you were rejected. How far back can you go to remember your first rejection, if you can even remember it? Because many of us would have actually blocked our first rejection, that real rejection that that created, a way of being and a way of living for you to be able to cope with your perceived thoughts of rejection moving forward. Now, let me go back 40 plus years when I was a little girl. I think when I was a little girl, I am the only girl of my mother. I've got four brothers. Of them, two, I've got a set of twin brothers, my youngest brothers, from my mum and my dad. They rejected me all the time because I was the only girl. So they didn't want to play with me, didn't want to share their toys with me. And that's one level of rejection. But as kids, we kind of we reject each other and then we forget we've rejected each other and then we come back and play again. So that was what it was like with my brothers. They would say they're not playing with me. And then 10 minutes later, we're all in the garden playing together. So I guess that level didn't probably impact me as much. I don't think it actually did because, the time frame was just too short for me to even think I was rejected. But looking back now, my first rejection, or perceived rejection, because it actually is perceived rejection, was when I was about six years old, and my parents got divorced. And up until that point, it was just like, mummy, daddy, all of us together, and that was the life. It was just perfect. And that was how, you think it's going to be, until one day you no longer see your mum again. And there's no explanation, nothing. It's just a case of, you're now living in a different house with a different person and a dad, and your mum is not there. And for me, that was probably the biggest rejection that I could remember, which in me, I created a survival mechanism for how I was going to survive and not go through that pain. And the problem is that when you are creating a survival mechanism at that age, you don't know. You really don't know. And I did not understand why my mum wasn't around, why, suddenly I was in this strange environment. And for me, I felt like I had been rejected. But the key thing there was not just that I felt like I'd been rejected, but the fact that I felt like the rejection was my fault. So it was something that I did. And as a child, you kind of recall the things that you do when your parents kind of tell you off. So one of the things that I did that my parents would tell me off for was I did not make my bed. I did not make my bed. So, and I always remember it was make your bed, make your bed. It was like a mantra in the house, make your bed. When you get up in the morning, make your bed. And I never used to do it. So so for me, when I'm looking back now, I think this is one of the things that I thought was the reason as to why my mother left, because I had upset her too many times and she was done with me. And this is one thing, I feel like, we look at children and we think that, oh, they're going to be okay. We don't need to explain stuff to kids. But actually, I feel like you do. I feel like if you make an adult a decision, then you need to explain that decision to a child in a way a child will understand it. Because if you don't explain it, then they're going to think like I thought it was my fault. And all my life, up until very recently, actually, I have not dealt with rejection, because I have dealt with it in the way in which I have kind of like protected myself. So one thing that I do like consistently is when I get out of bed now is I make my bed, because I feel like it was me thinking, well, if I continue to make my bed every single day, then my mother will come back. She'll come back, she'll come back, she'll come back, she'll forgive me, and then everything will be okay, and then I can move away from this strange house that I'm in, move back into the house that I know and I love, and then we can all be together as a family. Obviously, that did not happen, because that's me thinking from the point of a child. So at the point when I accepted that my mum was no longer, or was not around, or had gone, had left me because of the things that I had done, I created my own survival mechanism. So like, it was this wall that came up, and I would never be in that situation where anybody could hurt me in that manner, period, full stop. So I lived my life kind of being quite, almost like carefree to a certain degree, like, not letting emotions come in, not letting people come in, not letting things hit me hard. Like, it was easy for me to move from one place to another, because I was just like, well, you know what? It's easier for me to do that than to stay in a particular environment. So, so my life was kind of like, it was created as a result of the rejection. And then when you move from your young age to you become an adult, and then you get rejected along the way in which you deal with it's just absolutely, you use it. I guess everybody's got a different way of dealing with rejection, and it comes out in different ways, and sometimes it can come out as if it's strength. So for me, the way it came out was like, you know what, I was going to be the best achiever. I was going to do everything over and above anybody else, because like when I did that, then nobody could reject me, because, going back to the thought that, okay, if you didn't make your bed, then people reject you. So if you don't do things well, people reject you, is my thought process. So it's like, for me, I'm like, I got to do something really, really well. Everything that I do, I've got to do it over and above. I've got to be better than my brothers. I've got to, over deliver in school. I've got to have the best business going. I've got to be the best. I've got to be at the top. This was all my thing. It was almost like I had to be at that level. I had to be above whoever was next to me, because if I was the best, then you can't reject me. But the problem is that actually rejection is the state of life. So as I went through to school, I got rejected even by my teachers, because, they were like, well, we don't think that you're good enough to go to university. So why are you... Actually, the story was that, in those days, when you're in A-levels, then you could pick, like, whether, they used to literally go and visit universities. And then you would pick which university, or at that time it was a polytechnic. They had university, polytechnics, and then they had schools as well, like higher learning schools. So 3 levels. And it kind of was like, if you're really good, then you go to university. If you're mediocre on average, you go to polytechnic. And if you were not good at all, then you'll go to one of these higher level schools, basically. So I put down that I wanted to go to university. I wanted to, when they were visiting the different locations, I wanted to visit universities. So that's what I put down. Because I was like, well, I'm going to university. Like, my dad says I'm going to university. Everybody in my family's gone to university. So of course, me, what? I'm going to university. So I then, so I put that down on my paper. And to my astonishment, my teacher came back and says, well, we don't really think that you should go to university. We think you should, not even polytechnic, we think you should try for one of the schools. I was like, really? Like, rejection? So what happens? Wall comes up. I'm like, you know what? I can do better than everybody else. I can be at university. If I want to be in university, I can go to university, all that kind of stuff. So my levels rolled up, my defense system came up. And guess what? I went to university. Yes, I did. But the thing is that, yes, great. The rejection that I thought I got in my early age has spurred me into like doing and being and moving forward and putting energy into all things and has taken me from this level to this level to this level. But it's not necessarily been the best way to live. And now that I've found in my recent years that actually, rejection is a form of life. And number one, I was not rejected as a child. And number two, actually, if I go back to even number one, like, somebody said something to me probably about 7 years ago, and it didn't even resonate with me at the time. And she said to me, God wants you to know that you are accepted, And at the point when she said that, I burst into tears. One of the few moments when I cried, because I don't cry that often. Again, one of the byproducts of being rejected or feeling rejected when you're a child. And she says, God wants you to know that you're accepted. And it wasn't until possibly, a few years ago that I realized why she was saying that, because I was just like, yeah, of course, I just brushed over it. But what God was saying to me is that you can never actually ever be rejected when you're accepted by the person that has actually created you. So God has created you. He's created me. So he's created me and he's my creator. So what he was telling me is don't you ever think that you've been rejected. Doesn't matter what people say, what people do, how it comes across, you're never rejected. I created you and I accepted you and I accept you. And it doesn't matter what you do, I will always accept you. I will never reject you. And when that sunk in, when that came from head knowledge to in here, I know that that's the truth, all things changed. And I started to look at things differently, and God started to show me all the situations, the incidences when I felt that I'd been rejected. And he turned it around to say, everybody in life has got choices. And they make a choice as to whether they're going to go A or go B. Sometimes people will go, yeah, I like that person, or I don't like that person. I want to play with that person. I don't want to play with that person. But that does not mean that you've been rejected. Never take somebody's choice as a rejection on you, because you have always been accepted by God. God accepts you. God created you. God loved you. God loves me. He created me. He accepts me. And I know that now. And I'm able to walk in that. So it doesn't matter what anybody says or does. I don't need to follow or believe in what they say. So if somebody will tell me, you can't do ABC, I don't need to prove to them that I can. It is a question of, I know that I'm accepted by God, and God is the one that can tell me what I can do and cannot do, where I can go and where I cannot go, the heights that I can climb and cannot climb. I no longer listen to the lies of other people, because at the end of the day, sometimes it is ignorance. Sometimes people reject you and they don't even know that they've rejected you. So it's not done on purpose. And sometimes you feel rejected and the other person hasn't actually thought about it. Like another story, I've got stories all day long I can tell you about how I felt rejected and how people have put me in positions where I felt rejected. And I remember when I wanted to be in the, not the basketball, the netball team. I wanted to be in the netball team. I so wanted to be in the netball team. I wanted to play netball. But I'm 5'4". Not that that's a problem, because it really shouldn't be a problem, because I Googled how short are people, how tall is the shortest person that's played netball and basketball, and you won't believe they're 4 foot something, 5 foot something. So yeah, so it's possible. However, what they said to me is, well, actually, you're too short. But rather than them, they didn't tell me I couldn't join, but they just didn't use me. I was always sat on the bench. Can you imagine what that would feel like when you're sat on the bench all the time and you see other people being picked and you're thinking, well, what about me? What about me? What's wrong with me? Why have you not picked me? Can you imagine? Well, yes, you can, because you've been through it. You've been rejected as well. So, I don't think there's anybody that I'm talking to that's listening to me that hasn't gone through some sort of rejection and hasn't had to process it in a particular way. But this is the thing. It's kind of like being able to not only acknowledge that actually sometimes people just don't know what they're doing. They probably thought, oh, they were doing me a favor by getting me onto the team. But then they decided, well, she's too short, so we're not going to use her, but at least she's on the team so she can watch everybody else. Whereas I thought, you know what? They don't want me. I'm not good enough for them. And again, what happens? My walls come up. So for me, I'm like, if I ever got a chance to get on that field, they will see how great I am. And again, that would have pushed me. And probably if they ever did choose me, which they didn't, but if they ever did choose me to be on the field, then I probably would have done wonders, but not for the right reasons. I would have done wonders because I was trying to prove a point. But I'm here to tell you that you don't actually need to prove a point. Not to me, not to anybody, because you're already accepted. God already accepts you. So if nobody that you physically can see accepts you, just know that you're already accepted by Jesus. He loves you, and he wants you to know that he will never leave you nor forsake you. He will always be there. And me walking in that knowledge allows me to lift my head up high and go through my day and know that, it doesn't matter what people say. It doesn't matter what my story has been so far. It doesn't matter what my childhood was like. It doesn't matter that my parents went through divorce. That was not my fault, That was a decision that they decided to do. And the fact that they didn't handle it very well, that again was not my fault. So I know these things now. And now when I do things from a total different position. And now I have peace. I don't have this burning, like, I've got to do this kind of thing that's rubbing up. I've got to prove to people. Or I don't have this victim mentality that where I've got to hide in a corner because I feel like I'm not good enough. Both of those are no good. Both of those are no good to your health. But I can rise my head up and go, yeah, you know what? I'm accepted. So, you know what? If you don't want me, then that's fine. That's okay. Why? Because I'm already accepted, Like, I've already got the bonus. So by you not accepting me, that's fine. By you not wanting the talents that I have, that's fine. By you not believing in me, that's fine, because you don't need to believe in me. You don't. You don't need to accept my talents. You don't. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and the guy said, you don't owe me anything because God has already given me everything. And that's like a mantra that I'm going to take forward. Whenever I'm in a situation and I'm thinking this person has done me wrong or that person, you know what? I'm always going to remember that to say and think, you know what? You don't owe me anything. Doesn't matter what you've done. You don't owe me anything because God has already given me everything. And that's the truth. So I just thought I'll pop up and share that with you today. But if if you are going through rejection of any thought, because what rejection does is it brings about a fear. And when you have that fear, you try and do things so that you do not go into that dark place. But that's not the best way to live. You really need to overcome the fear of rejection. And the only way you can overcome the fear of rejection is by really putting your heart into God's hands and believing and knowing that you are already accepted. You're accepted before you're in your mother's womb. You're already accepted. There's nothing anybody can do that can take away the love of God and the acceptance of God from you. So that's it. That's today. And I hope I'll see you tomorrow. Love you. Take care. Bye.